I want to play a few different videos for you. And the first one is an example of something I've been saying to you all, which is that on TikTok, the social media platform, there is video after video going super viral of pro Kamala content. And that connects to polling that I'll show you being reported on that is truly shocking. You rarely see the type of momentum swing in an election like what we're observing now, and that's being reflected in polls. And so we'll talk about that. And that the reason it connects to the first video that I'm gonna play for you is because I've been saying to you all that there's this pulse. You can tell the pulse has changed, the momentum has shifted just in the vibe, talking to people out in the world, looking at online content. Even the freak out from the people who don't like Kamala Harris contributes to this notion that things are shifting in her direction. But I told you, and I'm so excited that this is actually happening, that just wait, I kept saying over the last few days, because it's going to take a second to be reflected in the data, in the poll numbers. And that's exactly what we're seeing. But first, when I say that the young people are much more excited about the candidacy of Vice President Kamala Harris, and there's this energy explosion, and all of my friends sort of in my generation who normally aren't keeping up with politics much are texting me because they know I'm the political guy, saying, I'm seeing Kamala Harris all across my For You page on TikTok, and I'm getting so hyped about it, and I don't know what's going on. And it's videos like this that I'm referring to.
Let me end with this, Mr. Trump. I know you have so much.
And this is, of course, I started over with the explanation. As you know, this is second gentleman Doug Emhoff. If/when Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States, he'll be the first gentleman of the United States.
Let me end with this, Mr. Trump. I know you have so much trouble pronouncing her name.
Kamala Harris, you can say Kamala, you can say Kamala. If I mispronounce it or not, I couldn't care less.
But here's the good news. After the election, you can just call her Madam President.
And this being posted by our friends over at Midas Touch. I know it seems trivial, but I need you to understand how significant of an impact this is having. I've never heard from so many people in Gen Z in my entire life reaching out to me to specifically voice their excitement about the election. What? I can barely get you guys to talk about politics normally. This is so thrilling. And it's because of a bunch of moments like that one, and just the notion of this next generation of leadership and a bunch of different stuff. And this is now being reflected in the polls. Here we go. CNN reports.
You know, Steve mentioned this, Harris is, she was the VP, but now she's at the top of the ticket, and I think opinions of her are moving rather fast. So this is the net favorability ratings. This is from an ABC News Ipsos poll that literally dropped just within the last 24 hours. I'm going to be interested if other polls follow. So this is net favorability.
Some people wait for new albums to drop, right? Some people wait for new merch of an influencer they like to drop. We wait for a new polling set of data to drop.
Ipsos poll that literally dropped just within the last 24 hours. I'm going to be interested if other polls follow. So this is net favorability. It's favorable minus unfavorable. Look at this. A week ago, She was at minus 11 points. Look at this. She's jumped all the way up to plus 1 point. Trump has actually dropped a little bit from minus 11 to minus 16, but that movement isn't so wide compared to this 12-point movement. And I think the real question is, will this stick in other polling? Because Democrats absolutely love this, and it gets back to Steve's point that opinions on Harris, I think, are much more malleable than they were for Joe Biden, where you just had that consistently negative rating. Here.
So understand how exciting this is. Somehow, even though you're supposed to be on this high after you have a party's convention, and Trump just had his, the Democratic Party hasn't had theirs, but somehow Trump has already lost favorability. And Vice President Kamala Harris has gone from a negative 11-point favorability rating to a positive net favorability rating, which in this political moment, in these divided times, is super rare for national figures like this. And so that is a really good sign, and that may just be the beginning. For her to shift that dramatically is something you rarely see, again, in this current political moment where you have such strong, dug-in camps on either side. For someone to get way more favorable in the eyes of the American people just because they're introduced to them finally, whereas previously the only time people heard about Vice President Harris was usually when it was a negative story, some Fox News narrative being pushed. Otherwise, she wasn't discussed too much. Now she's being discussed, of course. Now she has people advocating on her behalf. Videos going viral left and right of her that are positive. And just a short time, a few short days of that, and she's swung in the favorable direction, and her net approval rating or net favorability rating is in the positives, which, like I said, is not super common these days. And we'll see that continue to reflect more in your matchup polling as well. But we're already seeing in battleground states Kamala Harris leading or it being within the margin of error in all the battleground states. What? And we still have time to make a lead in all of those states. So I'm feeling very, very delightful on this day. You also have the thing that I am feeling in my personal life reflected in data this way. Newsweek reports Kamala Harris crushes Donald Trump among Gen Z voters. New poll, and we'll compare this to the Biden figures. Kamala Harris has leaped ahead of Donald Trump in a new poll looking at the support of America's youngest voters aged 18 to 34. Respondents, which represented all Gen Z voters and younger millennials, were asked who they would vote for in a head-to-head matchup between Harris and Trump. 60% opted for the vice president, while only 40% picked Trump. That could be an election determiner right there. When asked the same question, if Biden were the Democratic nominee, Trump's support among young voters increased to 47%, as only 53% supported the current president serving a second term. So this was very different for the Biden-Trump matchup. And a group that was worried about, young voters are supposed to be much more Democratic, as we've seen in recent elections. Why doesn't Biden have a larger lead? And already, Vice President Harris is making up some of that ground. I'll say again, I did not expect this. At the end, right before Biden decided to drop off the ticket, I started to say, it looks like we should probably consider a candidacy for Kamala Harris, or more than consider. But I wasn't, as you all observed, just absolutely 100% Biden needs to drop the ticket. That's a certain path to victory. It felt also uncertain. And the certainty I feel now is hard to express. And the hope that I feel now. I woke up this morning and I said, what am I feeling right now? What is this? I feel weird inside. And then I realized it was hope. I felt an unusual feeling, just complete and utter total hope, which is a good feeling. If you are not already, yes, you, unless you are already, then not you, but anyone else, can you please make sure you're subscribed to the channel by clicking that subscribe button? Makes a huge difference. Easy, free, but I appreciate it greatly. Back to the video. One thing I do want to play for you as well is Trump daring to say this at a recent rally.
The people in this room, high IQ individuals. I'm running against a low IQ individual, her. I'm not even talking about him, her. I got a low IQ individual.
Who is the low IQ individual in this race?
I'm going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning, because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds...
Yeah, and remember that when MAGA folks talk about the quote unquote injecting bleach moment, they say, oh, that's a hoax. That was made up by the fake news. And what they mean is, I guess, which is so ridiculous to deny this happened because of this sort of specification, but they'll say, well, he never said inject bleach. And they confidently say it's a hoax when people say that Trump said to Americans inject bleach. Yes, obviously it's an oversimplification to say Trump said you should inject bleach. But the president standing at the podium talking about before that putting UV potentially inside the body, and then they're saying disinfectant into the body through injection or some way else. So you can simplify that down, especially when you're doing it in mockery to injecting bleach, a form of disinfectant. And this did cause people to be confused about what they should and shouldn't be doing to prevent and get rid of COVID. Then here is Governor J.B. Pritzker.
I'm going to be out there fighting for Kamala Harris. I mean, she genuinely cares about middle-class Americans, about fighting for workers' rights, making sure that we're guaranteeing a woman's right to choose. These are hugely important issues. And, I love how the Republicans love to, they like to throw names on people and cast aspersions, but they don't have any issues. And, in fact, they've been hiding their issues. I don't know if you noticed that J.D. Vance wiped away all references to abortion on his website because his positions are so extreme. He's a fraud, right? He's been avoiding answering questions around that. Donald Trump is, of course, a 34-time convicted fraudster. And so they belong together, J.D. Vance being Donald Trump's mini-me.
Well said. I was watching online. I try not to give too much energy to these things because it's just a waste of time. Don't bog me down. I'm feeling too good to be bogged down by MAGA's online freakouts, but I saw some of the drag queen sort of stuff and was thinking, imagine thinking that's gonna work. They keep trying this in elections, the anti-woke, moral panic, it's gonna be the downfall of America type stuff. And if you contrast that against a message of pro, as he said, workers' rights, women's rights, voting rights in our advocacy for democracy, we're talking about basic American rights. Your little weird Fox Newsified freak out about wokeness, that's not going to compel people like our message and our ambition to really solve problems, to really uplift people, and really advocate on behalf of unique American opportunities that we want to provide for people. I promise you, Republicans, so I guess keep doing it, but you're going to lose. You're going to lose if that's your message and if ours stays clear and consistent, as we're hearing from many of these Democrats such as this.
But what we are going to focus on, we're not going to be bothered by their nonsense. We're going to focus on the fundamental choice. The American people are going to see in Vice President Harris somebody who, whether they were a prosecutor standing up for women and girls, whether they were an attorney general taking on the big banks to get $20 billion for homeowners and their families, or somebody who, when they were in the Senate or as vice president, has stood up for reproductive rights, taken on the gun lobby, establishing the first White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, has been a champion for working people. And on the other side, you got Donald Trump, who's a convicted felon fighting for himself. So that's the choice that we're going to make sure that the American people understand when they go to the ballot box in November.
Now, I should have added to that list children's rights to be alive when they're at school, just trying to learn. But I really encourage you all to go reach out to somebody you know isn't necessarily super political, and explain to them the stakes. Tens of thousands of volunteers have started to sign up to volunteer for Vice President Harris's presidential campaign, And the donations have now passed already since Biden dropped off the ticket, $200 million. What? Oh my gosh. So it does make a difference. And each person you reach is one more member of this incredible pro-democracy movement. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments. We've seen, I used to not mention it, but we're already seeing merch fly off the shelves. So if you want to get yourself some Luke Beasley Show merch, we're working on Kamala Harris Luke Beasley Show merch. A little merging of the branding there that will release as soon as we get it designed. But right now, if you do want the little Luke Beasley Show logo that you can see on my computer usually, you can get that at lukebeasleymerch.com or on YouTube. It pops up under the videos, I think, and on the home page. And if you want to donate to Kamala Harris's campaign through our link so that we can reach our goal of raising $1 million for the campaign, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of this video.